We love our pets here on CityCast Boise, and we all want to give them the care they deserve, including our aquatic friends, which is why we're excited to talk about Fly-In Vet. Fly-In Vet makes house calls and can help with any fish health or water issue. You'll get excellent care for your pets from Dr. Becker, a board-certified aquatic veterinarian. Make an appointment today. Call 208-260-0327 or go to flyinvet.com. That's flyinvet.com.
Today on CityCast Boise. If autumn in the Treasure Valley feels hotter than you remember, you're not imagining it. Our area is warming, and that means ripple effects for our health, recreation, and fire risk. But is this weird weather or proof of a bigger climate shift? We're digging into what the data shows and what it would take to slow the trend. It's Monday, September 15th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Here to break down this topic is Climate Central researcher Caitlin Trudeau. Thanks so much for being here today, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me.
Why is fall in the Mountain West, including Boise, heating up? And why is it heating up faster than other parts of the country?
One of the reasons that we know is because of climate change. It is not the only reason why it's warming, but it's a big factor. So Boise has warmed about 4.5 degrees since 1970. Those are just average temperatures. When you look at the nighttime temperatures, the nighttime temperatures have warmed over 5 degrees since 1970. And we're seeing this all throughout the Mountain West and the Southwest. And actually, every county in the lower 48 has warmed in the fall since 1970. So it's a widespread trend that we're seeing, but we are seeing it pretty prominently in the Mountain West.
And can you explain to me and maybe to listeners, what is the impact of that over time, or why is that concerning?
So what we're talking about here are average temperatures. What we're not talking about are all of the days above 100. What we're not talking about are all like the drought periods. What we're not talking about are the prolonged heat waves that we're seeing even in winter now. The average temperature may not seem like a lot, but even a very small amount of warming can do a lot of damage. It can do damage to our health, it can do damage to agriculture, it can do damage to all parts of our economy. So it's really important to remember that even though it may not sound like a lot, the impacts of climate change are really magnificent.
And Caitlin, I want to get into all of that and really break that down with you. But first, can I ask, how much of this is linked to human-caused climate change rather than just natural weather patterns? Is that something you're able to quantify?
Yeah, so actually we have a tool called the Climate Shift Index. It is a daily temperature attribution tool. So you can look anywhere in the world on any given day, and you can see how much more or less likely human-caused climate change made temperatures. So for example, start of fall from September 1st to the 5th in Boise, temperatures were almost 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, and those were made at least 3 times more likely due to human-caused climate change. So this is something we can actually model, and we can look and see, what would the world look like without all the carbon emissions, and then we compare that to today in our world with all the carbon emissions, and we just see how much more or less likely are these temperatures.
And you mentioned that we're not talking about, how many days above 100 degrees did you have? Which is actually kind of perfect because my next question was about a Boise State Public Radio article where they talked about, all kinds of people were floating the Boise River. It was one of the biggest years for the Boise River, but it was actually a cooler summer that we had fewer days over 100 degrees than we did last year and the year before. So how does that quote unquote cooler summer fit with the bigger picture of long-term warming that you're describing?
Yeah, this is a great example of the difference between weather and climate. So when we talk about climate change, we're really talking about the long-term average, the long-term change over time. And even if we have long-term warming, which we are, we're still going to see some years where there's cooler weather. You think of before climate change, when you roll a dice, you have even chances of warm, cold, and medium years. With climate change, it's kind of weighted the die a little bit so that now you're going to be seeing a lot more warm years. And that doesn't mean you're not going to see a cold year. It's just that the probability of that is a bit lower. So, one thing that I think helps people is, you can think of weather as the clothes that you're wearing today, and climate is the kind of clothes that are in your closet. Or you could think about weather is the meal you're going to have for dinner tonight, and climate is the kind of food that you have in your fridge.
Okay. Oh, okay. I really like that analogy because, I have sweaters because I know it's going to get cold, but today I'm wearing a tank top because it's warm.
Exactly.
Okay. I love that. Is one of the best analogies I've ever heard of that. That's very, very accessible. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This fall, treat yourself to a trip to wine country in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. The Walla Walla Valley is home to more than 130 wineries, offering vineyard experiences and delicious wine tastings. Bonus, grape harvest is happening soon. Besides incredible wines, Walla Walla has a walkable, historic downtown core to explore. There's plenty of farm-fresh dining options from celebrated chefs to treat yourself to. Go at your own pace around town, do as much or as little as you want. And here's a thought, September is a beautiful time to take a scenic road trip to Walla Walla, just 4 hours away from Boise. Go to wallawalla.org to plan your visit today. That's wallawalla.org.
So, Caitlin, what kind of changes might people in Boise notice in their daily routines as we're seeing these rising fall temperatures?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's just the heat, right? We're seeing more heat, and some people may like heat. Some people may think, great, we have more great weather. We can go outside. We can go float down the river. And that is true. But with this increased heat also comes increased health impacts. And we have extended fire seasons. And when we have more fires, we have more wildfire smoke. And there's also, there's things like mosquitoes. When you have warmer temperatures that extend into the fall, the time of year that mosquitoes can hang around and kind of flourish extends as well. So, there might be some good things where you think, okay, I can go outside. It might be some good things about agriculture. In Boise since 1970, the growing season has increased by 51 days. So we're seeing a huge increase, and that may be great for some people. But that also comes with things like higher energy bills and, more expensive crop insurance. And that will trickle down and make the cost of food more expensive. So, there may be some pros, but definitely the cons will outweigh the pros with this.
Yeah, that's good for me to hear. I definitely fall in the camp of when it's warmer than normal, I'm like, oh no, I'm having a great time. But but like you said, there are potential cons that really could affect us. I'm also curious if you have any data or information about how these warming falls influence things like the city's water use or our rivers and reservoirs. Is it impacted by that at all?
I think it really depends. It depends on runoff. It depends how much snow we get in the winter. When we start to see earlier heat ups in the spring, we can see earlier runoff, which can affect our water supplies throughout the year. We know with climate change, we're also seeing longer periods of drought. So we have these kind of short-term dry periods that can stress our already strained resources like our water supplies. So I think it really depends. It depends on the year, and it depends on, what resources we already have. But it definitely can negatively impact it if we're not prepared. So it's not something that we can count on as safe.
You mentioned agriculture. We are an incredibly agricultural dependent state. And you mentioned that the growing season is extended by 51 days. Could this potentially lead to things like a second harvest like southern states have that could potentially actually be really good for agriculture in this state?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there are definitely some pros that are there for agriculture. I mean, the first frost is also coming about 27 days later in Boise. That's really good for potatoes, beets, wheat. So there definitely could be some pros, but you're also going to see more pests and more spread of disease that could impact that agriculture. And these really like once we have these really high heat streaks and especially prolonged periods of heat, that can really affect and stress our agriculture and can lead to crop damages.
And what kind of impacts could these warmer falls have on the timing or patterns of outdoor recreation around Boise? Like, we love our recreation. How could that be impacted by this?
Yeah, no, I mean, more days where it's kind of nice to be outside, right? But that's not always going to be that way. I mean, you could be having more risks of fire. So maybe those days you'd want to go spend outside are actually really smoky. I think that there will be times where people think, oh, this is nice. It is warmer a bit longer. But as time goes on, we are going to see so many negative impacts that it's going to be really hard to kind of rely on those shorter periods of positivity.
Yeah, so we'll be able to fondly look back and be like, oh, it was so nice. We were hiking in the foothills in the end of October and the weather was lovely, but now we're all dying in the climate wars. So
we actually just did a study looking at extremely hot days over the course of your childhood. And someone who was born in Boise in 1970, in the first 18 years of their life, they probably experienced about 56 extra extremely hot days because of climate change. But if someone born in Gen Z, someone born around 2007, now they've seen 266 extra extremely hot days because of climate change. So we know that as time goes on, generations are impacted differently. And we know that Gen Z, Gen Alpha are seeing proportionally many more of these extremely hot days. So it's not just really nice days, we're seeing extremely hot days that make it really difficult to be outside.
do you have any data or information as a nurse and as a parent? I'm curious about that, about the stress that's having on their bodies or how that impacts their growth or development?
Yeah, heat is actually the number one killer when it comes to extreme weather events in the United States. People kind of overlook it. They think hurricanes, they think tornadoes, they think, these really big events. But heat actually kills more people than any other type of weather in the United States. So, you have these all kinds of impacts. Being outside more, kids love to be outside. We want our kids to be outside. But we start to see days where it gets really, really too hot for them. And then, of course, when we have things like fires, it makes it really difficult for them to breathe, can really stress their lungs and stuff like that. So I think, we love to spend that time outside. I love to spend that time outside. I'm from the foothills in California, and it's my favorite thing to do. But it's definitely getting a lot harder, and the risks are kind of piling up, especially for children.
So what are some tangible things that Boiseans can do in their daily lives to adapt or respond to this trend?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a hard question because not everyone has the same capacity to do something, right? There are a lot of things that are out of our control these days, but I think, anything that you can do in your own capacity, things like thinking about where you buy your food, thinking about, if you need to drive your car to the store, to wherever, if you need to go fly X many times per year. But it's not just about personal choices. It's really about the community as well. I think one of the best things that you can do is just talk about it. Talk to people in your community about the changes you're seeing, about how it's impacting you personally. There's a lot of community that we can build in that. And I think that especially over the last several years, we've really kind of lost a lot of that community. We've been really disconnected. And I think this is one of the ways that I know I personally have really found a lot of joy in community and being part of a larger group and talking about this, because we're all kind of in this together, and it's not all on one person to change things or to change their life completely.
No, and I really appreciate that because sometimes it does feel stressful. Not that I don't want to do things, but I can recycle as much as I can. I can really try to be thoughtful about what I'm buying and where I'm buying it. But that's not ever going to make up for Taylor Swift's jet use. I'm sorry, Swifties, but it's not. Or all the other billionaires using their personal jets, 70 times a month. And so What are some community level steps that, as residents of the Treasure Valley or of Boise, we could encourage from our leaders that could make a real difference here?
Well, I think one of the first things is just get involved in your community, become one of these leaders. We have a lot of people who kind of think that that's for someone else, not for them. But I really encourage people to use your voice, become like active members in your community. And, I think every community is different. Their needs and what they're facing can be kind of different. But I think just coming together and thinking of different ways where you can be more efficient, not just to, balance out the billionaire jets, because again, that will never happen. But it's not about doing that. It's not, again, everyone has different capacities for what they can or can't do. And the world can be a really tough place to be these days. I really don't want anyone to feel like they are expected to do more than they can, or that they're a bad person because they drove to work. That's definitely not what we're talking about. I think anything that you can do to just be more mindful of your impact. Are we perfect people? No. We're never going to be that way, but I think that's okay. And I don't think it's about being perfect and being like a super green recycling, making your own soap at home. I don't know. There's a lot of things we could do ideally, which would be great. But I don't think it's about that. I think it's just about trying a little bit to do what you can in your own capacity.
Caitlin, I really appreciate that, because I feel like sometimes with these conversations, it feels insurmountable and it feels just like complete doom and gloom. I can't do anything to fix it. I'm just here for the ride. So I do appreciate that. We're all just doing what we can. Let's try to work as a community. What are some groups that we could maybe potentially focus on? The first that comes to mind for me are unhoused or the homeless population, where I can come into my house and I have the luxury of affording AC. But what are some groups maybe we could focus on within the community that might be disproportionately affected by this trend that we as a community could work to support?
Yeah, I think the unhoused is great. I mean, that really anyone who is disadvantaged, people who don't have the kind of resources or don't have the ability to, don't have the ability to take kind of actions into their own hands. People who are disadvantaged, people who are elderly, people who are, children, people who just need a little bit of help. I come from an area where we have very frequent wildfires. And one of the things that I think our community has really kind of liked to lean into is just making sure that we all talk to our neighbors, especially the elderly neighbors or anyone who might need a little bit of help if we have to evacuate. People don't have cars, people who are unhoused, those kinds of things. And just making sure that you reach out and say, hey, if something happened, I'm here. Just kind of offering yourself up as someone who can be there if they need it. But yeah, I mean, when you think about people, especially who don't have homes to go to with AC and don't have kind of that safe space, they're definitely feeling the brunt of this. So I think that's a great thing to be mindful of.
And if you had one message for people in Boise about what these warmer falls mean for our future, what would it be?
I'd say we all have something that we really care about that's being negatively impacted by this warming. Whether it's your church, whether it's sports, whether it's kids, whether it's, recreation, we all have things that we really love and care about, our communities, our homes, our families. And so I just really encourage people to give everyone a little bit of grace. We are all in this together. We all have things we really care about, and we're all kind of trying to do the best we can. I know it's scary. I think about this and talk about this every day, and it can get really difficult. But the thing that really gives me hope is all of the conversations that I've had in my 7 years working here, talking to people all over the world who are just genuinely interested and they're concerned and they want to know what they can do. And I find so much inspiration in that. And so I hope others can have those same experiences and reach out to others and kind of get that inspiration as well.
I was nervous going into this because I feel like these conversations are always just doom and gloom. It's the worst. I don't know. Buckle up, everybody. Yeah. So I really appreciate your insight and perspective and that little bit of hope. So thank you so much for coming on the show to break it down.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to tell your friends about the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning to look at why West Boise wants a library. Catch you then.